Under the second unit of financial statement analysis, we're going to cover the topic about annual reports. Now, annual reports are handy documents that companies release every year, specifically listed companies, publicly listed companies who have their stocks or equities listed on stock exchanges. They would come up and give these reports on an annual basis, which typically talk about the financial performance of the company. Our idea would be to try and derive as much information as possible from some of these documents and try and understand what exactly do these documents actually offer, and how does this information become useful for us when we are performing, let's say, a financial statement analysis activity, right? So broadly over the course of this unit, we're going to cover topics around introduction to annual reports, glancing through an annual report, major parts of an annual report, financial highlights. These are the major parts which we'll then look in detail. Financial highlights, management discussion and analysis, the financial statements of the company for the last 2 years, usually what is reported in the annual report, both on a standalone and consolidated basis. Finally, we will end up doing certain amount of exercises on annual reports and try and look at those exercises on annual reports and understand how does this become relevant for us in terms of both understanding the industry as well as understanding the company in more detail. So what essentially is an annual report? What is the definition of an annual report? As the name suggests, an annual report is a detailed, comprehensive report of the company's activities in the year, and it contains a variety of information for shareholders and also possibly other stakeholders, primarily around the financial performance of the company. Now, some of this information that is there is mandatory to be given, right? Why is it mandatory? Is because the law asks for it. You know, there is a rule that you have to give financial statements. There is a rule that you have to disclose what is the nature of shareholding of the company. There is a rule which you have to disclose, what are related party transactions as such within the company. We'll discuss all these as we go along. Some part of this is mandatory. Some part of this, however, is optional, and that depends on what the company wants to give, right? Now, that's an interesting point, because a good company should want to give as much information as possible, right? So more information means typically more transparency, right? And if there is more transparency, typically this is a good company with a good management, right? When we say a good company with a good management, we are saying that usually the more information you are giving, the less likely you are to hide any information. And if you are likely to hide information to a lesser extent, then the data that the company has given is more trustworthy. So essentially, the annual report, in a sense, starts giving you an idea about whether or not a company is revealing any information that is optional in nature. Some companies do it, some companies don't do it. The ones who do it typically are the ones who are more transparent and more information is available about those companies. So when you're doing financial statement analysis of these companies, it is typically easy to find information about these companies, right? How does that enhance eventual shareholder value is going to be a topic of discussion at a later point of time in probably some of the other subjects. But for now, what is important for us is to understand that the annual report gives a lot of information around the financials of the company. And the more information a company gives, the better placed an analyst is to actually go and make a good sense of the numbers of the company, right? So the bigger the information availability, the better your understanding of the company and the industry. The annual report sometimes can also give you information about the industry itself, right? So you can get an information about what is the industry working in. You can get an information about what a company does, right? So we may not know what all segments a company is in, but they have to disclose all this in the annual report. That what are all the works that they do, what segments do they work in. So essentially some of this information becomes important for us as well. And annual reports are good sources of information for this data as well. We will look at this as well as we go along to understand this in more detail and how does this help us. Now, let's take a quick journey through an annual report and understand what is it that an annual report typically entails, right? Now, there's a short letter to shareholders by the chairman of the firm. This is there in some of the annual reports. This is not there in some of the other annual reports. But this basically talks about what is the company doing, what are the opportunities that the company has. We will look at all of these in much more detail as we go along. But primarily, a short letter to shareholders could be a good source of information about the company, right? Information about what are the strengths of the company, what the company is trying to do, how do you really look at the data around the company and understand that data, right? Then the next portion that typically almost all annual reports will have will be highlights, performance highlights for the last few years. This could be 5 years, 10 years, whatever, but the company typically talks about what have my sales been, what have my profits been. In some cases, volume of sale is also given. We will look at examples around these as we go along. But let's say a company sells a certain amount of steel. They will talk about how many tons of steel have been sold, right? That's essentially what uh, the performance highlights talk about. Then you have something called as the director's report, also in certain cases known as the board's report because of the board of directors that a company has. Now, this is essentially what the company has done during the year and primarily financial information. Only during the year, what has been the sales, what has been the profit, and so on and so forth. That information is available here. Then we move on to one of the most important parts of an annual report, which is something called as management discussion and analysis. I'll put a star to this because this is one of the most important parts. And as an analyst, we should make a habit that we definitely read this part from any company's analysis that we are doing. From now on, any company that you pick up for analysis, the least we need to do is try and read management discussion and analysis from the annual report, right? What does this have? It has industry and segment analysis. Remember, we were saying that an annual report gives an idea about what the industry does and what the company does. That data is available here. So if you're looking at the annual report of a tire company, details of the tire industry would be available here, right? If you're looking at a company that is in rubber, tires, and certain other things, all the segments that it works in are available here. You will know so and so company works in segment A, B, C, D, and E, right? And what is the performance in those segments? Sometimes it contains sort of forward-looking statements. Now, when we say forward-looking statements, these are some sort of projections, or even if it doesn't give projections on a company's basis, it could give projections on the industry basis. A certain market segment is going to grow by a certain amount, right? That could be also important in our understanding of the company and analysis of the financial statements of the company, because this gives an idea on what segments will be growing at what level and what kind of investment is happening globally in certain of those segments, right? That's what management discussion and analysis talks about. One of the most critical parts of the report that from now on we should be looking at reading it for all particular companies that we are analyzing. Following this, typically there are other data points as well which are there in the annual report, but more important for us are the financial statements listing. The companies typically list what is called as standalone financial statement and consolidated financial statement. We will understand the difference between these two terms at an opportune point of time in future in one of the other sections during this unit. But standalone is only the parent company, single company of which we are looking at data on. right? And financial statements. Financial statements are followed by what are called as notes. Notes are sometimes also known as schedules, right? So what does a note talk about? So for example, the financial statements will include the balance sheet. They will include the income statement or what is called as P&L. They will include the cash flow statement. The notes will give further details. So for example, the balance sheet talks about loans that a company might have, right? How much of this is India-based loan and how much of this is foreign loan is what is available in the notes and schedules, right? Again, something that we will get into more detail as we go along. But for now, the understanding that is important for us is that the financials of the company, the balance sheet, the P&L statement, and the cash flow statement are available in the annual report. Then the company, along with all the other companies that it controls, when we say subsidiaries, these are companies that the original company controls via shareholding, via equity holding. These companies are combined together to give you a consolidated picture of the company, right? Similar picture, but sometimes consolidated pictures become significantly different if a company has a lot of other companies that it controls, right? If it has a lot of other companies that it controls, then you could have significant differences in what is standalone financial statement and what is consolidated financial statement, right? Again, we will look at these in more detail as we go along over the course of the next few videos. Finally, what is important for us is to look at something known as related party transactions for the company, right? Now, what are these related party transactions? Typically, typically these related party transactions are transactions with any subsidiaries or related parties. When we say related parties, these could be group companies. What do we mean by group companies? Two brothers have different companies. They might not be linked directly, but if they are dealing with each other, there is a possibility that some of these transactions may not be completely clean, right? So when a company has related party transactions, it is mandatory to disclose those. Why is it mandatory to disclose those? Because there is a possibility that some transactions may not be completely clean in this scenario, right? That's why companies list related party transactions. And eventually, when we come around looking at quality of financial statements, that is where this related party transaction will become an important parameter for us to gauge, right? That's the journey through an annual report. Those are the primary portions that an annual report typically entails that we need to probably look at as we go along, right? Now, where do we find the annual report? It's good to read it, but it's important for us to understand where are we going to find it from. Now we can get access to annual reports from a variety of sources. What are these sources? Typically, the company's website. Usually, most companies upload their annual reports on their own websites under a section meant for investors, right? So there will be a separate section on the website which will talk about investors and reports for investors. All the financial information for the company and any information that investors may benefit from or investors may want to know is available in this section called Investor Center or Investor Section, right? We will look at this as an example. The company is usually also listed. These are, remember, publicly listed companies listed on stock exchanges. Those exchanges will also upload company annual report. What are exchanges? Exchanges would be exchanges like National Stock Exchange, NSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, BSE. These exchanges will also have the annual reports of companies, right? Finally, you could have third-party websites such as moneycontrol.com which also give access to annual reports. So if you're unable to find the annual report on the company's website and unable to find it also on the NSE or BSE website, you can then look at some other source to get the report. The report by default is available freely. You don't need to pay anything anywhere to get access to the report. And that is what makes the report a easily available document and more importantly, a very, very relevant document for us, right? Let's actually try and find this out for a certain set of companies. Let's pick up a company like Infosys. Let's pick up 2 or 3 companies and try and find out data. So I'll just pick up 2 or 3 companies. I'll pick up Infosys. I'll pick up a company like Eicher Motors. What does Eicher Motors do? They make the Royal Enfield motorcycles in India. We're going to use this company extensively for our understanding. And we'll also probably look at a company like Britannia. What does Britannia do? They make a lot of biscuits, and they are one of the leaders in the biscuit segment in India, right? So let's actually try and go to the first segment, which is let's look at their company websites and try and see if we can find out annual reports there. So let's first look at the Infosys website. And when we look at the Infosys website, that's the home page of the Infosys website. It's infosys.com. That's what we arrive at, infosys.com. Now, typically, when you look at a website, on the right top corner or in the menu bar, you will find this tab called Investors. So for example, here in Infosys case, the Investors tab is here. You click on the Investors tab. It will take you to a page for the investors, meant for the investors. So you reach this page in which you have data points around investors' home, financials, reports, and filings, right? Now, annual report should come under reports and filings. So we click on reports and filings. And if we go down on this page, you will realize you have data points around quarterly results and you have data points around annual reports. 2015 annual report, Infosys follows a financial year which is April to March. So 2015 annual report is the latest report available for us because the last financial year ended in March 2015 and we are not yet at March 2016. So at this point of time, as we record this video, the last annual report available is 2015. If you click on this, it will automatically open the report, the annual report of the company, right? We will very quickly take a glance through the table of contents of this report so that we understand what all is available in the annual report of a company like Infosys. So if we keep going ahead on page number 15, you see this table of contents, and remember what all we had discussed. We had said there is a letter to the shareholder. We had said there is a financial performance highlights of the past. There is a board's report, which is the financial performance for that particular year. There is management discussion and analysis, which will talk about the industry and what the company does. Then there are standalone financial statements that are relevant for us, consolidated financial statements that are relevant for us. And within this, there is more information around related party transactions as well. So that's with Infosys. We go to Infosys website. There's also a tab called View Past Annual Reports. We can click on that and we will see annual reports for each of the years in the last many years is available, right? In fact, Infosys' annual reports available from 1999 onwards till date. Last 15 to 16 years annual reports are available under this tab, right? Let's go ahead, look at another one. Let's look at Eicher Motors. That's their front page of the website. And you will once again see on the top menu bar, you find this tab for investors, right? That's the tab for investors. You click on this tab for investors and it will open up the page which will have information on the company's detailed performance for the investor. So we click on this and we click to proceed and we get the information. Now if we go down further on this page, we will find financial reports, conference calls, and here we go. That's the annual report section that we find, right? So here is the annual report. Now these guys follow a financial year like the US financial year, January to December financial year. So for them, December 14 data is the one which is completely audited and available. Now remember, while December 2015 may also be available, annual reports have to be mandatory documents that are extremely well regulated. So first you create the report and then someone audits the financial statements. So usually after the year ends, it takes about 3 to 4 months while annual reports eventually come in, right? That's the time frame that we are looking at. And essentially the annual report we have is for the previous year, You can click on this. This will open up the annual report for the previous year for Eicher Motors. Right? Once again, we can kind of move into the annual report and try and look at what is the table of contents. And when we look at the table of contents, we will realize similar structures here as well. Letter to the shareholders, performance over the years, director's report, financial statements, balance sheet, cash flow, so and so, and then subsidiary companies and consolidated accounts, right? We see consolidated accounts here, consolidated statements as well. So similar information is available in this case. Let's look at the third one very quickly, Britannia Industries. And once again, in the top menu, you'll find Investor Center. Click on Investor Center. You will reach the point where all the reports are available. We come to this page, which is the Investor Center. There are presentations, investor service, financial performance. Let's click on financial performance, annual report 2014-15. That's where you can find the annual report. This is the annual report for 2015 that we can basically click, and that would open the annual report for 2015 for Britannia as well. So as we saw, if you look at the company's website, the data should be available on that website. And even if we look at this annual report, it will have similar setups. There will be financial highlights. There'll be a report of the directors, management discussion and analysis, then statements, financial statements, and then consolidated financial statements, right? So these are the data points that that we have. If you look at this company carefully, this does not have a letter to the shareholders, right? That doesn't really mean too much, but some companies choose to write something, some companies may choose to write nothing in that case, right? These are reports that we have found from the company's websites. You can also find the same report from the National Stock Exchange website, right? Let's look at how. So if we search for Infosys right in the top menu bar and we click on this Infosys Limited here, it'll take us to a page of Infosys, and here we could look at a tab called Company Information. When you click on Company Information, under this tab, it'll talk about annual reports here. So we can click on the annual reports here, and it takes to a page which will have all the annual reports which are available for Infosys, right? So the annual reports that the NSE website has available are for all these periods. We can then come to this point and type whatever other names we want to type. So we can type, let's say, Britannia, and we can get data, or we can type Eicher Motors and we can get data. Here there seems to be some small bug here. Let's reset and type Eicher Motors. So it says Eicher Motors here, and we can search for Eicher Motors, and the annual reports you will see 2014 is available. We can reset the data and search for Britannia Industries, search, and you have annual reports available for Britannia Industries as well. And finally, you could once again look at data points around these companies on websites such as Money Control. You go to this kind of a website, once again, right at the top of this website, you find this menu where you can search for companies. Search for a company like Infosys. You get the name Infosys here. Click on Infosys. It'll take you to a page which will have information on Infosys. And within that page, you can click on Financials or Annual Report. You can click on any of these two. Let's click on Financials. When you click on Financials, you will find that Infosys annual reports are available somewhere on this page here. So you can click on Download Annual Report in PDF format. That's where the annual report is available for 2015. Right? You can click on this and you will get the annual report for Infosys as well. Ideally, this is the least preferred point from where you should be looking at the annual report, right? So that's broadly how you find the annual report of a company. Those are the areas where annual reports are available. As we move ahead, we now get into the actual discussion on individual parts of the annual report and learn from those parts of the annual report about what the company is trying to tell us. More on this in subsequent videos. Thank you.